and what they have to offer if elected. Now, here are your hosts, Don Elwell and Dan Andrews.
This is what, is this number 4, 5? I forget.
5.
This is a 5 then? Okay.
It's 5.
This is number 5, so like the midway point, right?
We're halfway.
There we go. We're halfway there in the immortal words of John Bon Jovi. So as we are Meet the Candidate series, candidate for Highlands County Sheriff, we have John Singha in the studio today. John, how are you, sir?
Good morning.
Good morning. So we got you all set up here, and obviously you are kind of challenging for the position, and wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of start right off, and just, if you would, give us a little bit of the history, your bio for the many folks out there that don't know anything about you, and obviously what kind of your qualifications and such like that. Just an introduction to John Singha.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, pleasure to be here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. Background bio, my family moved here in the early 1970s. My father moved us here. My father was a medical doctor, my mother a nurse. We moved in the early 1970s, so I've been here since about 1973. And he came here to start a cardiological practice here, and grew up here. A product of our local education system as well, up into even to South Florida State College to get my Associates of Science in Criminal Justice. I have a Bachelor's of Arts in Organizational Management and a Master's in Public Administration from Florida Gulf Coast University. I got into law enforcement in 1995 and have been serving on and off since then, primarily in Highlands County in the city of Sebring Police Department or the Highlands County Sheriff's Office, but I have worked at a couple other agencies such as the Tampa Police Department, and I currently work for the city of Wauchula Police Department as the Detective Sergeant. So that's a little bit of my background from a law enforcement perspective. Not sure if you guys have any other questions about that. And qualifications, I've been in law enforcement for 29 years now. I've been blessed to do a lot of different been involved with different units and different assignments as a police officer during that 29 years, primarily the ones that I've chosen. So I've been really lucky that way instead of being pushed into an area that I didn't want to work. Right. So I've got to do a lot of the things that I favored or chose to do. That includes a lot of patrol time, some criminal investigations for about 7.5 years. And then I worked in a narcotics unit on and off for about 3.5, 4 years. One of those years as a sergeant supervising the narcotics unit here in Highlands County. And that's pretty much where I liked to be then when I was a younger police officer. Not so much want to dabble in the drug enforcement thing on a daily basis anymore.
So, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family?
Okay.
Your wife and kids, and a little bit about you outside of law enforcement. And
yeah.
Then we'll dive into the hard questions.
Sure. So, I'm married. My wife is currently works in medical administration. She works remotely. She did used to work at Highlands Regional for HCA, was her last job that was on site, and now she does like they call it vendor compliance. She does compliance type things for a bigger company out of Dayton, Ohio, and she enjoys doing that. As I mentioned earlier to Dan, she may not stay in the remote realm for forever, maybe go back to actual brick and mortar hospital at some point in time, but right now she's really enjoying that. All my kids were born and raised here. Well, born in Winter Haven technically, but raised here in Highlands County. Still here locally. My brother, I have 2 remaining siblings. One of my siblings, my younger brother, passed away about a decade ago. But he was a special needs person his whole life, and just to roll into a little bit of charity work real quick, that's where we focus our charity work. Once a year, we put on a Christmas benefit for special needs people in Highlands County, the Special Stars. There's other new groups out there that we work with as well. Do that. We provide that for them, the meal for them for that, and that's where we focus on that. But back to my siblings that are remaining, my brother and his wife are both attorneys in St. Petersburg. They run their own law firm called the Singha Law Group. And my younger sister and her husband are both doctors of pharmacy, and they're in the Bradenton area over in the Lakewood Ranch area. So that's a little bit about my family background.
So let's talk a little bit. I just kind of delve into it, just generically, I guess. Why do you feel that you are the best candidate for the position of Highlands County Sheriff?
Sure. I feel I'm the best candidate to be the next sheriff of Highlands County because we're at a crossroads in law enforcement right now. We have a lot of things going on, such as the new workforce. Younger workforce are a group of people. They're not bad people, but they sort of want to climb to the upper echelons of their professions very quickly before they've served any time in the trenches, so to speak. We have that going on. We have in law enforcement, we have an issue with hiring and retaining people into this field. I think a lot of that stems back to the time when certain members of our country and our government were trying to defund the police, and that turned a lot of people off and scared a lot of people. And I think in general, a lot of people are not, younger people are not being raised or pushed into the areas to at least explore the possibility of being in service-oriented careers. So we have now a lack of a pool of qualified people to pull from. I think that's the biggest problem we have locally, and we need to deal with and solve that problem as soon as possible to get law enforcement staffing back where it needs to be so we can provide the proper services and public safety that we need to do for that. And that's one of my main goals, is to rebuild that sheriff's office, and that's what's going to take.
Okay. I just had one comment real quick
Sure.
too, for folks, is that we don't normally take listener questions on the air. We won't be actually taking any phone calls during this one. However, if you would like to text a question in, you may certainly do so. You can text it to 381-5622. If you've got a question that you would like us to ask a little bit later on, we've got a section for listener questions. Have a couple of them right now, but we'll take some more. 5622 is that phone number. And Dan, you've got the next question.
Sure. So, John, you talked a little bit about the staff and how they need to earn and work their way up. But one of the questions I would have is, as sheriff, you're what I would call the head recruiter, and through that defund police movement, and let's face it, these guys are putting their lives on the line every day. How do you go, or how would you go about recruiting and convincing young folks that law enforcement is a opportunity for them and a long-term career path opportunity for them?
So, most people come to work and are looking to earn money. That's the ultimate goal, is to make a living doing that. And one of our biggest problems, I think in Central Florida as a whole, but definitely the sheriff's office here, is the lower starting wage. I think we need to bring the starting pay up to begin with and be able to advertise that we are competitive with agencies in Central Florida. That will allow us to at least start attracting and recruiting young people that are either interested in going to the academy or have already gone through the academy or currently in the academy to come work in Highlands County at the Highlands County Sheriff's Office. We definitely have to find a way, and I'm not a marketing person, as evidenced by my political campaign, but we're trying to we have to do some kind of marketing to do that as well too, to get people to come into law enforcement. I think we probably have a small pool of local young men and women that would like to get into law enforcement, and I saw recently that there's like in the high school level, they're doing a lot of things towards the medical field and towards IT. And from what I'm understanding, there's programs there that are gearing towards people get at least exposing in high school what that kind of career would be. Right. And then they get that idea and can be able to go out and seek that in college or trade schools or whatever. I think that's something that we need to address here locally, is to have maybe like small academies or part of the curriculum in the high school level geared towards not just law enforcement, but first responders as a whole, where maybe they are doing some of their work in first responder settings and still learning, and then maybe developing an appetite for the public service stuff in the high schools here. And then we have our local people that want to come in, our local young people that want to come in and get into any of the public service that would be first responder related.
Sure. So we're talking with John Singha, of course. He is candidate for Highlands County Sheriff. Right before we went to break, you mentioned about the salaries being low.
Well, let's just share again if you have some questions you'd like to.
The phone number. Okay.
Yeah.
I
You said you were going to intro back with that.
If you have a question, if there's a listener question that you'd like us to ask at some particular point, we've got a ton of them that we can start getting into real quick. here, including questions about Chick-fil-A and whether or not John enjoys Chick-fil-A or not. That's one of the questions. But if you'd like to call in with your questions that might be a little bit more pertinent, 863-381-5622 is the phone number. Again, it's 863-381-5622 to text in your questions to that number. But again, John, as we talked about, so tell us, again, how short are we versus some of the folks around us, and what would it take then dollar-wise per person and probably overall for us to be competitive?
So my most recent research into this is that the sheriff's office, doing the math by the hours worked and the starting pay this is for a starting deputy with no experience,
Gotcha.
is around $47,200 a year. We're in the competitive aspect in that with a few of the lower end, like the City of Sebring Police Department, where I work, the City of Wauchula Police Department, but other agencies have recognized that problem and are moving ahead. For example, the Hardy County Sheriff's Office moved up to about $50,000 starting a year. The biggest problem with it is that through state movement, through the state government, the state agencies have decided, like FHP, FWC, to move their starting pay to the $55,000 range. So if you can imagine being a new police officer about to graduate the academy or coming out of the academy, and for clarification, some people that go through the academies are sponsored by their agency, so they go work for that agency who sponsored them. But if you've put yourself through and you're looking for a job, you're sort of like a free agent. You can go wherever you want, and you're going to pick 47 to start or 55 to start. Are you going to go work for FHP or one of those type of agencies, or one of the local agencies? The DeSoto County Sheriff's Office, a neighboring county, has moved their starting pay to $55,000 to compete with the state agencies. Polk County's starting is $58,000. So, and those are not including other benefits like paid holidays. I'm specifically discussing if you take the hourly rate and the number of hours worked, no overtime involved, you're down below. So we are below many of the agencies here, and I'm not currently at the sheriff's office, so I do not know what the plans are and what the budget talks are this year, and maybe there's some plans to move that forward. But just from a pay perspective, we're behind, and that can be a detriment to recruiting. It also can be a detriment to keeping people here in their first few years when they get a few years of experience, and other agencies start looking at them going, hey, if you got a year or two of experience, you come here and we'll put you at $58,000, $59,000, $60,000 a year. That's a $10,000 a year discrepancy that we need to fix. Definitely is an issue that we need to address as soon as possible, because what's happened in the past, and I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I've seen this before. For example, at the City of Sebring when I was there, you end up losing a vast majority of people, a number that's very harmful. Like in City of Sebring, we lost 7 in a year back in the late 90s, early 2000s in 1 year, and that was a 36-man department at the time. So that it was a quarter of your patrol function if you look at it that way. And the city ended up realizing the problem, and then instead of incrementally bringing these raises up and keeping competitive, they had to shell out a whole bunch of across-the-board money. Although only for 35 people, right, versus a couple hundred at an agency the size of the sheriff's office, that becomes very financially burdensome on the taxpayers, and of course on people like yourself, county commissioners, who have to make those decisions. If we can start to find a plan to move them up incrementally to get competitive within a few years, I think we can stop that. I don't think you're going to be able to do it all at once.
Okay, so and using your numbers, you said $47,000 for the sheriff's office. Yep. I heard 55. Yep. Was kind of the number there. About $8,000 gap, if you will. So 15-20%. Your thought would be to incorporate that over how many years, roughly, to get us even in how long?
Sure. I think that if you to retain the current deputies, I think most of them are reasonable people, that if you had a plan in place over a 2-3 year period of time to increment that they would stick that out to see the money increase to a reasonable pay for them. Mm-hmm. But you also have to keep in mind that the other agencies are going to be increasing some extent too, so there has to be a little built-in aspect of that as well too. The Highlands County Sheriff's Office does have a collective bargaining unit. They do have a contract, and those contracts usually run for about 3 years. So I think a process over a 3 year period of time, building that up incrementally and adding in numbers considering that the other agencies that are already paying more may increase theirs a little bit, to keep them in that somewhere in that range is probably the plan to do that. The exact numbers I obviously couldn't spill out right now and share with you at this moment in time. That takes a little bit of research, and of course all the other elements that go into pay. It's not just it's just your hourly rate and how many hours you work in pay. Obviously, the Social Security, the contributions into FRS, the retirement system, and everything else, workers' comp, all that is a percentage that has to be calculated as well to find that right sweet spot, that number to get this right.
So as I understand it, there's about a 4% increase average per year going on right now. However, if we're 15% behind, then in addition to that 4%, we got to make up that 15.
Right.
Because you got to keep in mind, like you said, that the 4% has to be there almost every year just to keep going. So about 5% on top of the 4 for at least the first 3 years, that brings us even, and then you're kind of looking at the 4% going forward according to what it sounds like.
Yeah. And again, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I can work with the 5% number to stay with. I don't know that that's going to be
around
right. I don't know if it's a high enough number. It could be as high as something as 7-8% when you do all the math. I'd have to sit down and look at it column by column or position by position, as far as not individual deputy position, but where they're at as far as their year in service.
Okay. So you are a challenger. You're challenging the incumbent, Paul Blackman. So what attributes do you think separate you from Paul? What can you bring to the table that differentiates you from Sheriff Paul Blackman?
Well, most importantly, I think I have going to bring a fresh perspective into the sheriff's office, and some of the things we talked about, figuring out the financial problems to remedy losing deputy sheriffs that have been there, as well as to retain or to recruit and get those people to come here as well too. I think one of the biggest problems we have in public safety right now locally is the inability to get the human resources out to the calls for service we have. We need faster response time, and we also need the deputies to the amount of deputies out on the street to be able to do that. And when we're shorthanded because of whatever the deputy's reason is, whether it's pay or other benefits or the environment that they're working in, and we're short-staffed, we can't serve the public to the proper levels that we need to do that. For me, and the question, what attributes do I bring is, well, the current sheriff has been in office for 7 years. He's had his opportunity to do things. We're at the point right now that I believe the sheriff's office needs to be reconstructed and rebuilt. If you can imagine taking a structure and taking it down to the bones, and the bones are good, and then rebuilding it, refurbishing the inside as you want to be more fluid with what law enforcement expects nowadays, is my goal and what I would like to do. And I think I'll bring that perspective different from the current administration of the sheriff's office.
So what are, can you elaborate a little bit on what those expectations are? You said that the modern or nowadays there's a different expectation. So what is that expectation?
Well, from a law enforcement perspective,
Yep.
or in a field perspective, I think the most important thing to do is to establish the road patrol to the significant numbers where they can get and answer these calls for service for the citizens. That's the primary focus of local government, is public safety, but more specifically a sheriff's office is public safety related, and we have to get there and be able to do that. The other, another big thing in law enforcement now is to look at problem areas and focus on that. So if we have a specific problem area, let's say where there's burglaries or drug sales or something like that, there needs to be a segment of the sheriff's office, the human resources, the manpower, to go and focus on those specific target areas until that has either dissipated or completely, been taken out of the equation of what we do. Traffic enforcement would be an example of one of those things. Using new philosophies to go and attack specific areas that are problematic is the way to go in law enforcement nowadays. It's problem-solving policing. Where are the problems? And we go there. Now you'll get citizens that will be up in arms and go, well, I never see the police in my neighborhood. Like, for example, out in the country club, we never see the police. Well, you don't have any crime out here either, and you really don't have a speeding problem. So if you have common sense people in the community that realize that, and you can have honest conversation with them, I think they'll realize that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't send a patrol car out there every once in a while and do those things. But if we focus on where our crime is or our issues such as traffic enforcement, target that will handle a lot of the problems. And I think you'll find that our citizens will be a lot more happy with the law enforcement services they get.
So staffing-wise, you mentioned, and when they asked you the question, you mentioned that we need more deputies out there, obviously, in addition to them being in the problem areas. What are you proposing as far as the staffing goes? Like an extra 10%, 20%, 50%, doubling? What's roughly, what do you think we need to be at staffing-wise?
I instead of giving you percentage, I would rather give you like more specific numbers, if that's fine. Sure. So and again, I'm not at the sheriff's office now, but there's a common number out there, usually 10, 12 deputies out on the road at a time. Okay. That's not including if a deputy's away at training or someone's called in sick or on vacation. So when you start to get down to the bare bones, you may have 4 or 5 deputies in the North District working, maybe 6. Not including the supervisors, and 4 or 5 in the South District working 6. So you're at 10 or 11 there, a few supervisors out, 13 or 14, but we're not getting the job done. So instead of giving you a percentage, I would like to see those numbers increase to the high teens per squad. So there are 4 patrol squads, okay, for road patrol. Right. And if you were to increase those numbers, let's just say by 5 deputies a squad, at this point you get to those numbers. What I would propose is each squad has its own lieutenant, which is the administrator, so to speak, the low-end administrator. They're called the watch commander here. And what they do is they run that daily operation of their patrol squad. So there's 4 squads, there's 4 lieutenants on the road. My proposal to present it in lay terms a bit is if you can conceptualize that lieutenant is his own police chief, him or her, that's their own police chief, and that 15, 16, 17 deputies they have underneath them is their own little police department to do what they want, the freedom to do what they want, with directives from the top that, hey, these are our target areas, but you go run it how you see fit. And that includes providing deputies for traffic enforcement on that same squad. Right. You have canines on that same squad, so you have a select amount of resources that we need, traffic enforcement deputies, patrol dogs or canines out, and then your normal road patrol deputies with the supervisors, and they can be free to direct their people where they want to do it. It builds a great level of autonomy, and it gives the leader a chance to prove themselves as well too. And I think that's the way to go. There has to obviously be some directives that are common or consistent across all 4 patrol squads, but to have the freedom for those watch commanders to do what they need to do and have the resources there to address a problem. It may be a problem that arises for a day or a week and then it's taken care of, or it may be a problem that's a long-term thing that we need to deal with. And I think that's the way to go to build leadership, and it also will accomplish the problems that we have.
So, and just before we go to the next break,
sure.
15 roughly people per squad, 4 squads, about 60 people-ish is what you're saying on one shift?
And again, I would like to look at the numbers more specifically when I'm the sheriff. It may be higher than that. It may be a number of 18. I don't want to sit here and tell you, it's only 15. It may be as high as 18. Yeah. If the availability is there, when you reconstruct the sheriff's office internally, and we were fully staffed, which is going to be the biggest problem again, it may be as many as 19 or 20 per squad, and that would be 80.
Well, let's use the lower number for now. Probably not a bad starting point. That's 60. What do we have roughly now, do you think, out there per shift? If 4 times 15, you're thinking, what do we have roughly?
Yeah, right now I don't know how many are showing up and what the staffing level is, but I would say on average probably 13, including the supervised 14 at the time right now.
Okay, so it's 15 wouldn't be a lot more then.
It wouldn't be a lot more, but I don't know what the numbers are now compared to what we want to accomplish.
It sounds like the proposed change is empowering that shift commander.
First of all, give them the resources they need to do it to be successful, and then allow that to occur. Yes, sir.
Very good. We're talking, of course, with John Singha, candidate for Highlands County Sheriff. Meet the Candidate Series number 5 on our list of 9 that we're going to be doing. And we got some listener questions, and we got some that we're going to be hitting you with real soon. And I'm sure it's going to involve recipes of some sort. I have no idea. We'll touch all on that stuff too as Meet the Candidates continues. Mr. John Singha himself. John is a candidate for Highlands County Sheriff, and we're going to take some listener questions that have been texted into us and sent to us over the last few days. If you've got a listener question that you would like us to ask John, you can text it to 863-381-5622. Again, that number, 863-381-5622. Dan, the next question is yours.
Sure. So, John, you're obviously a trained politician, right?
Absolutely not.
So when you look at the war chest out there, it seems like Paul Blackman has a significant war chest, and it seems like you're running maybe more of a grassroots level style campaign. So why don't you talk a little bit about the campaigning and what you're doing to kind of bridge that gap? Some would argue that the money defines a campaign. I think maybe on the national level, but on the local level, there's probably things you can do to bridge that gap. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yes, absolutely. So, but first of all, let me say the luck is definitely turning in my direction here. I'm here today this morning on opening day of Chick-fil-A in Highlands County, so everything's going my way. Having said that, to answer your question, Dan, obviously there's a significant amount more money in my opponent's coffers, but I'm doing a grassroots campaign. I don't have a big staff or anything like that. I have a few friends that are helping. Of course, my wife been very supportive. So we've taken the money. We were doing some old style campaigning with some signs out, putting a few signs out, and if we get a little bit more money, we put a few more out, yard signs and bigger signs as well, so people traveling can see that. We're obviously doing some social media stuff that we're working on. Very new to me. I had no social media, personal social media before this campaign, not personal one or a campaign one. So
I wish I could get rid of mine.
Yeah, understood. So we're involved with that a little bit. I don't know what kind of results that will bring as well. And of course, we'll do knocking on doors here coming up in the near future. I did a few yesterday in the heat, which was very, very tedious to do. And then, of course, we'll do some mail-out stuff as well, too, what we can afford. Just a wide variety of things we're trying to accomplish through that, and with the understanding that we're behind in money, and there's not much time left to raise any more money.
Yeah.
No, that's understandable. We certainly appreciate the answer and the honesty behind that answer, but I think the grassroots approach in our county is a good one to take. So, your website, I noticed this last night, actually. I was doing a little bit of prep work for today, and I noticed that your website is fairly aggressive. I mean, it has some comments there that it's like, okay, you start off with, the current sheriff must be removed from office. I mean, it just sounds pretty assertive to me. And so I thought to myself, all right, well, one of the questions that we got, and I kind of twisted it around a little bit, and I made it a little bit friendlier. It was okay, what failures, I guess, can you point to with the current administration that has kind of necessitated that statement?
Sure. Well, and again, I don't want to direct. So leadership stops at the top. We all know that. And to give you an example, and I've mentioned this just earlier in the broadcast, the primary responsibility of government is public safety. The primary responsibility of the head of public safety is public safety. Our traffic homicides have gone up on average 80 a year in the last 7 years. I'll use up to 2023 statistics. These are not my numbers, by the way. You can find them on the Department of Highway Safety or Motor Vehicle numbers. Okay, they're not something that I just manufactured. Last year we had 14 homicides in Highlands County. 3 of those involved officers that were cleared as justified. So that leaves 11 homicides. Those are unheard of numbers. So the violent crime is going through the roof. We have a drug enforcement problem. As I mentioned before, that's sort of my expertise, although I haven't done it in a while. I understand that narcotics enforcement is a business. It is an illegal business, but it is a business, and it runs that same way. In order to combat it, you have to deal with people who would be the buyers or the purchasers of it, as well as the people who would traffic it in and sell it, both the buying and selling aspect of this business. It's going through the roof. And I've had some discussions with people recently, and I think you guys will enjoy this a little bit, is a lot of people stop short of understanding the real issues in criminal justice. Our sheriff to the north, Grady Judd, who a lot of people like and think he does a great job, he is aggressively enforcing things like narcotics and human trafficking and the related crimes that go with that. So what you see is every once in a while you'll see a press conference. He has a lot of pictures behind him on the wall. Oh, we've done 65 people. There's 100 people involved with this, and so forth and so on, which is great for the people of Polk County. And he's doing what he should be doing. What the people of Highlands County and Hardee County, some of these rural counties, need to understand is that Grady's aggressive enforcement hurts Highlands County. And what I mean by that is he displaces his criminal element into Highlands County. Are you going to go, if you're a criminal and you want to commit crime, regardless of what that is, are you going to go somewhere and try to get away with it where you're being aggressively sought after by law enforcement? Or are you going to come somewhere where you don't see that enforcement going on? And I would say this, back to you said was a strong statement. If we were enforcing it heavily in Highlands County, we had the staffing, the people with the talent to do, for example, narcotics enforcement or something like that, and we were doing that in a campaign year, don't you think you would see those press conferences occurring with those names up behind our current sheriff going, this is what we're doing? That's just an example of what I'm saying. It's not a hard feeling issue towards anybody there or whatever. It's just a factual thing based on numbers that we can see. So if we were aggressively doing this and solving crimes and making these cases, and maybe in Highlands we would have had, 15 or 20 people on the board behind, the administrator giving the press conference instead of 60 or 70. Polk County is way more populated, but we're not seeing that. And that's because it's not being investigated. In order to detect these crimes, they have to be investigated.
Yeah, so John, in doing some of my research, I didn't just go to a website and Google it like Don does. So John, though, I did talk to several people that have worked for the Sheriff's Department in the past, and they either retired, they were in the drop program, retired, or resigned, or were no longer in the department. And I asked them, why. And a common theme I heard was that there was a disconnect between the leadership at the top and those that are down in the trenches doing the work. What have you heard, and what do you know about that?
As far as hearing stuff, I haven't heard anything specifically recently. Obviously, working in law enforcement and being at the sheriff's office in the past, you hear that as an employee there. You hear that there's a disconnect. You hear, griping from the low end. Oh, what is the administrators thinking? What are they doing for this incident or that promotion, or why are we not getting more pay? So I think the disconnects that you're probably hearing is when you get an administration that's, I don't say older in age because they're not really. I'm actually older than the sheriff. But when they're farther along in their careers and they have that experience and they're getting closer to retirement, I think it becomes a focus of how do we make our last few years and get out of the door. And there's less effort put into the problems down below, such as the recruiting problem, the retaining problem. Then you couple that with a new generation of people wanting to get in law enforcement, if they actually want to get into law enforcement, dealing with that new mentality of I need everything right now, instant gratification. You have a whole lack of effort in communicating what the administration's goal is, what the mission is from a public safety perspective, but internally what that mission is to bring a good workplace, a good work environment to the young people. And maybe sometimes you got to put a foot in a butt every once in a while and go, listen, you're a new police officer. You're not going to get what you think you're going to get in your first year or two. The guys that you see up above you that are ranked, they have done 15, 20, 25 years to earn those positions, those salaries, and those benefits that go along with it. So come be a good employee, do your time, and things will work out for you. Keep your nose clean as best you can, and things will work out for you in the long run. It's a paramilitary organization. There's a rank structure there, and you need to spend a little bit of time in the trenches actually learning to be a police officer, learning to be a good coworker, learning to be a good subordinate. Sometimes, in order to be a good leader someday, you have to learn how to follow first. And I think we have a culmination of a lot of things there. There's a lot of disconnect there. If you want to point fingers at the top, if the people you talk to are saying, oh, there's a disconnect between administrator and the low end, I think that's a lack of communication. A lot of times administrators in all forms of government want to keep their plans close to the vest instead of communicating it out. I'm a firm believer in communicating it out. Hey, listen, I'm going to try to go get you guys a raise or something this year. I'm looking at this number, but I'm also telling you that it may not be that number, but that's what I'm working for. Why are you waiting until the budget comes out to go, this is what your raise is? That upsets people. And that's just an example of the disconnect. I think the biggest culprit or problem there is a lack of openness, transparency internally as to what the plan is, what the goal is, the missions, whether it's public safety related, this is what I need you to do with traffic, or what the benefits are going to be. And that upsets people because everybody wants to be in control of their own destiny, and the younger deputies do not know what exactly is coming down for them.
So continuing in that theme, sure. In the structure, the paramilitary organization, is there anything that you would change in how that is structured as far as sheriff, under sheriff, and then the next tier and on down?
No, I think it's a good structure. Titles can change a little bit there and there. I don't care for the term undersheriff. I like the chief deputy term, but titles changing doesn't change the rank structure. I think the biggest issue is to make sure that we only have the number of administrators that we need in place, and if we have excess, we can convert those into other positions, maybe at the lower end. Maybe some of the positions that Don asked about, well, how do we get to that 18 number? Well, if I can find a lieutenant or two that's not doing a lot and convert that into a patrol deputy position, that's less of a cost, because a lieutenant obviously would make more than a patrol deputy. And now I'm starting to backfill some of those 17, 18, 19 positions that I needed to address. So as far as the structure itself and the rank structure, no, there's not a neat reason to change that, but the reallocation of the human resources may be something that needs to be done to accomplish the final budgeting numbers that we need to do, so Don can be happy with me.
More than just me, unfortunately. I'm just a heavy. Of course, we're talking with Mr. John Singha himself, candidate for Highlands County Sheriff. The election day, of course, is August 20th. Early voting again starts on August 10th. We've got more questions to ask you, a couple, maybe one or two more serious ones, then some lighter ones, and then obviously we want to give you an opportunity to wrap up as well, because believe it or not, this hour has gone pretty darn quickly, but we got a lot more to do in just a minute or two on Meet the Candidates. We're going to return to the questions here, John. Question for you right now is in regards to your time at Highlands County Sheriff's Office. How long were you on the department?
I worked there for 15 and a half years. 15
and a half years, and you went in what areas did you work? So
in the Highlands County Sheriff's Office, I started obviously, even though I was an experienced officer when I came there, I started in patrol, which is usually where everybody starts. I did a little bit of time there just to get past your probationary period, which is a year long, and pretty quickly into that, I moved into the narcotics unit as a drug detective. Went back to the road for a short amount of time. In the narcotics unit, I ended that doing a lot of pharmaceutical diversion before the government, the local, state, and federal governments realized that opioids was a problem. Before it became sexy to talk about pharmaceutical diversion, I was working on those cases then, and took it to the extreme that I could. And honestly got a lack of support from the administration at that time, which is not the current administration, and decided it would be better to go back to patrol. Tired of bumping my head up against the wall and not accomplishing what I needed to do. And then went out to the patrol, and I got promoted to sergeant. Worked for patrol for about a year as a sergeant, and then went back into the drug unit as the sergeant over the drug unit, and then back to patrol as a sergeant before my exit.
So you left in what year?
2021.
2021.
Yep.
Okay, so under the current administration.
Correct.
And let me ask you this: why did you leave? I think it's probably a popular question. I'm sure.
Sure. Well, my exit from the sheriff's office was a forced exit. It was not something that I chose. It was the issue that I had with the current administration there, and without going into too much detail, there's some issues that are being worked out right now. So it's not probably prudent for either side to comment on it.
Okay, so legal things are going on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Okay, so we're going to get to some lighthearted, a little bit more fun questions, I should say.
Oh, good.
You know, so Don and I, well, Don especially is a foodie.
Wow.
I just follow him around. But so in Highlands County, if you had the opportunity, what's your favorite restaurant?
Favorite restaurant in Highlands County? Well,
for dinner, right?
Yeah, dinner restaurant.
I am
and not home.
I can find anything, things to eat pretty much anywhere. I'm not overly picky eater when it comes to things like that, but I have to tell you that I'm a big fan of the turkey burger, which is not made out of turkey, up at the Wild Turkey.
Okay.
So when I have a chance to run up there, that's usually where I'm going for that burger in Highlands County.
Sure.
Now when we're out, when my wife and I are out of town, we know a whole lot of places in the Pinellas County, St. Pete, Tampa area, because I've worked over there before, that are stellar places, and not to knock the food service industry in Highlands County, but there's many great ones over there that are far superior to Highlands County.
All right, well, I get it. Okay, so the Wild Turkey, is it a special kind of burger, or is it massive, or what's the novelty?
Yeah, well, it's like a burger recipe that they've had there for a long time, and they actually They actually coat it with a barbecue sauce with a very tangy barbecue sauce, and then they actually put grilled or smoked turkey on top of, like real turkey. So it's not made out of turkey, right. And then it's a burger. You can get what you want on it, cheese or whatever else you want on it. So it's really good burger.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess it's you, but I'll go. So what do you feel are going to be the easiest and hardest things to learn if elected to Highlands County Sheriff?
Well, being in law enforcement for 30 years, I don't know, there's not a whole lot I haven't been exposed to, even though, not in an administrative capacity necessarily, but, at some points in your career, you get involved with those conversations, whether someone grabs you into a meeting or, come review policies or look at a budget or give us some ideas. I don't know that learning anything is necessarily a hard thing for me. I think the biggest problem or the biggest hurdle for me, the biggest thing I need to address is consistency across the board within the sheriff's office. And that's from, a budgeting consistency, which is the big to obviously county commissioners, the taxpayers and things like that. Consistency when it comes to things like promotion, so that the young guys at the bottom end, we've talked in great length about, don't feel like they're being slighted and start looking outside of the agency for other places. Consistency in, how we handle any complaints against the officers. Consistency in allowing for training. All those things I think are lacking, not to a great extent, but they could be cleaned up, for lack of a better term, and to let the employees, all members of the sheriff's office, civilian or law enforcement or detention related, understand that there's a consistent playing field, a level playing field here. And I'm a believer that America's a meritocracy. If I give you the field and what the rules are, and I say go accomplish these things, and this will help you promote or get into special unit or whatever you want to do, and you as the employee go take advantage of that, I don't see where there's going to be a problem for promotions or special assignments. I think a lot of I spoke about this a little bit at a Republican meeting not too long ago. There's a bit of what people like to call the good old boy system that goes on in law enforcement, and I don't subscribe to that. I think that we need to let people get promoted and move along and get raises and things like that based on what they've accomplished, not what I think they've accomplished. Donald Trump is our Republican guy. He ran the first time on draining the swamp. To me, the swamp is a good old boy system at the local level, so we need to correct some of that.
Well, it's a good answer. I can't believe there's good old boys in Highlands County, but that's good. That's good. Now, normally what we'll try to do is we'll give you like a minute or so to kind of wrap up a little bit and tell all the listeners out there, if you would, why they should vote for John Singha on this upcoming ballot.
Well, again, I appreciate you guys having me in. There are very good questions asked by, I think, a few from the public and you guys as well. And during the answering of those questions, I think I've outlined a great amount of what my plans would be as the sheriff and what I would like to accomplish. I'll go back to the public safety aspect of this as to why you should vote for me. Traffic crashes are up, traffic fatalities are up, violent crime is up. The drugs are here being sold, make no mistake about it. There's criminal elements here that are not necessarily people from Highlands County that are now, engaging in criminal enterprises here. So in order to combat that, we need people that can aggressively do that. I am the guy with a background of doing that. I've been in the trenches my whole career. I've been involved with high-level DEA operations. I understand the drug game. I've been out on a patrol a significant amount of time, and I've also been an investigator earlier in my career in the type of crimes that normally affect people, such as your burglaries, your murder cases, and all that. Because of that experience, I believe I'm the guy that can motivate the troops below, the line officers, the line deputies, to get the job done. And I have a plan in mind. I can see it, a vision that can make public safety at the forefront here in Highlands County, and I'm the guy to do that because public safety is our priority here.
So where can people learn more about you? Grassroots campaign, where are you appearing, and how can they find out more about you?
So we have a Facebook and Instagram that's tied together. You can look at stuff. We post stuff pretty much daily. Definitely have an email address that's tied to all that. It's singhaforsheriff@gmail.com, and you can ask questions. I think I've answered every question that anybody's answered me up to this point. If you flood me with them, I may not be able to get to all of them with 40 days or so left to do it. And obviously, I have a website that has some very good information that you had brought up before as well.
What's the website?
Singha for Sheriff, www.singhaforsheriff.com.
Okay, very good, and we certainly appreciate you being here. Thank you, John, very much. Of course, Don Elwell, Dan Andrews. Meet the candidates. Don't forget D&D Live tomorrow, and we've got things to talk about with our debates coming up. Thank you very much for listening in, and we will see you again next week.